the purpose of this place is to memorialize the state police, which is the oldest statewide policing agency in the country.
Yeah, that's amazing.
In 1865 is when it was created.
Yeah.
So we try to memorialize the fact that it is that first agency, and a lot of people have been dedicated to the cause throughout the years, and a lot of people have unfortunately lost their lives in the cause.
Now, in the reading you supplied me, thank you, it mentions that the first Boston Police Department was inspired directly by Robert Peel's work in London.
Right.
And then I guess a lot of the subsequent policing came out of the Boston experience. Were there many occasions when the state police looked to overseas inspiration or ideas, or was it mostly homegrown from that initial start?
I think it was mostly homegrown from Sir Robert Peel's,
Yeah.
having created the London Police Force, which is still recognized as the first modern police force. And it was his model of sort of a paramilitary type of structure to policing, which still exists today.
Yeah.
And that is the model that we adhere to, and it's the model that is been modified obviously over the years, but it's something that I don't see changing too dramatically in the years to come. So here's our memorial wall, which is one of the first things people will see when they come in. Every member of the state police, including the previously consolidated agencies, the Metropolitan Police, the Registry Police, Capitol Police, anyone that died in the line of duty is represented here on this wall. And unfortunately, most of the early troopers that died in the line of duty were killed in motorcycle crashes. But then we have a number of different reasons. You know, people might think, oh, the cops always get shot and that's how they die. That's not the case. It's actually pretty rare.
Right, I know I see our Franklin neighbor, Mr. Barry, represented there.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I know a lot of the people on this wall. My classmate Mark Charbonneir was shot and killed in Kingston. Davidson Whiting, I knew Davidson. That was a tough time for the state police because within a period of just a few short months, we lost Davidson Whiting, we lost Mark Charbonneir, we lost two troopers in the helicopter crash, Paul Perry and James Metalliano. And then we did lose one other trooper, but wasn't a line of duty death, so he's not up here, but it was a tough time. But it's just kind of a somber reminder of the fact that it is a dangerous job and people are willing to put their life on the line to serve the people of the Commonwealth.
Now this looks like a model of a memorial. Where is that located? Or is it
State House.
That is at the State House, okay.
Yes.
I'll have to make sure I look for that next time I'm up there. Well, I'll have to ask about this patrolman Francis Moynihan on the boat. Pretty big boat, looks like. What's that all about? Francis
Moynihan was a trooper who perished during World War II. He was assigned to Troop A, and he was a Coast Guardsman.
I see.
And he was killed when his ship was sailing in the Pacific, and he went overboard, and they were unable to locate him. So we had a lot of troopers who went into military service during the war, and then they assigned folks that had very minimal training. They called them temporary troopers.
I saw that, yeah.
And they stayed on after the war as well, but so many troopers
were those people like 4F or something? They couldn't get into the
military?
military?
I don't know exactly why. They didn't go.
They obviously just grabbed anybody that could walk.
They could, essentially. So a lot of troopers did go in the military, so they had to fill the ranks somehow because crime doesn't take a break.
No, not at all.
So they stayed on after the war as well. And I mentioned before
you did.
the different iterations.
It was a great summary. I
was
reading about some of the details.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, and that's an actual uniform.
It's an actual tunic
Civil War
from
style.
Civil War, and the original badges up there as well. Well, the original state constabulary, state detective forces did concentrate on the liquor laws. There were a lot of liquor laws that were not being enforced by local authorities.
And was that a statewide thing, or did individual communities say
It was pretty much statewide.
Statewide.
Yes, so they enforced that, but also, importantly, they also enforced the child labor laws in the factories, like the factories you see out front here.
Sure.
That was one of the main responsibilities as well. You had 12 to 14-year-old kids, even younger than that sometimes, working. 12 to 14 hours a day in these
Right.
places. So they were enforcing those laws as well.
And both the owners and probably the parents sometimes were complicit in that, like,
Well,
we
they
need the
had
money,
to
send
put
them
food on the
work.
table.
Right.
So that's why those kids
Yeah.
were working. No compulsory education at the time, so we got away
I
with
did
it.
not know that.
Right. All right, we move on. So we went from those 3 iterations of the job to the 1921 signing. Let me just move over here and
Sure.
show you this. Acts of 1865, an act to establish a state police, but it was called the constabulary, and then the detective force, and then the district police. But in 1921, you'll see here, Calvin Coolidge signed into law, creating the Department of Public Safety, which the uniform branch as we know it today fell under. And the original man in charge was General Alfred Foote, a World War I veteran. These are his some of the memorabilia from him, as well as his hat or cover, as we call it.
Yep.
The original uniforms, as you see here, were World War I surplus. That's an actual World War I uniform there, with the black acorn patch that we called on the shoulder, and an antique World War I era trench gun, a shotgun.
Yeah. So at this point, they just had the Boston police strike. There was all kinds of radical stuff going on.
1919,
Right. So it was the year after, and this was to sort of backstop
Exactly.
law
yes,
enforcement.
Yes. But it came to pass that they did write laws because of what happened in Pennsylvania when the state police went in kind of as strike breakers.
Yeah.
And the laws were passed in this state that state police cannot be involved in any kind of labor dispute unless there is some kind of violence being engaged in their presence. So they were called patrolmen, so we call it state patrol. Again, some original artifacts. Captain George Parker was the original executive officer. He again was a World War I veteran. You can see the uniform here, same thing, very similar, the green World War I surplus. And some other memorabilia from that time frame, the old typewriter where they kept their logs, the old telephones. Snowshoes were vitally important in every barracks because you couldn't get around during the winter very well. Obviously, motorcycles couldn't be used. That was the mode of transportation when the weather permitted. Otherwise, it was horses.
No kidding. No four-wheel vehicles then at that point?
Not then, no.
Wow.
No. We didn't start having automobiles until much
Now, is that because the roads
later.
were so bad and you could kind
The roads were bad,
muddle through with a bike? But, and I noticed Buy Local, the Springfield manufactured Indians, not Harleys.
Yes, they did ride the Indian motorcycles when the weather permitted.
Yep.
Otherwise, it was horses. And the original patrols that went out, they would leave out from, say, Framingham, and they'd have to go out to Northampton. And there were 3 routes, a northern route, a central route, and a southern route. And it would take about 5 days for the northern and southern routes, and about 3 days for the central route.
Wow.
And as they rode along, if somebody needed police services, they would go to their local general store or post office and post a card in the window. And then the trooper would stop and inquire, and then they would go investigate. There were no hotels for them to stay in. There was no money for that, so they would be put up in people's barns.
Wow.
And maybe shovel hay or manure or something for a day and make up for the cost of feeding them. But yeah, they pretty much just relied on folks giving them shelter. Sometimes they slept under the stars.
Yeah. Generally well received by people?
At first,
Yeah.
it was kind of a foreign thing. People didn't know what to make of them, but as their reputation grew for solving crimes, people embraced them more, and they were able to get more regular billeting as they went along their routes.
I know in Franklin, we just got a donation of papers from the Society for the Prevention of Horse Thieving in Norfolk County, which is kind of a vigilante thing. And I think there was a similar thing for apple thieves in central Massachusetts.
Well, we're going to show you something a little different coming up.
It sounds like there was a need for law enforcement.
Yes. The uniform starts to evolve a little bit. Now there's a red patch and a white shirt with a red tie. Don't ask me why that happened. That was just the uniform change. Again, you see original leather work here.
Sure.
And I might just add that These uniforms, again, were World War I surplus. That's all they had at the time. And it wasn't until a few years later that they transitioned to what we see today. I just want to mention the Protector boat was the first marine craft that we had for enforcing the liquor laws on the water, because people were smuggling in liquor into these clandestine ports and warehouses along the shore. So they got an old steamer. It was secondhand or even third-hand. Didn't go very fast, but it was effective.
That might have been a problem.
Yeah, trying to keep up with the speedboats of the day was a problem. So we move along. Now we are moving into the 30s, and we're seeing now the familiar French and electric blue uniform that we see today. This uniform was modeled after the French military uniforms of World War I. If you go to the Massachusetts State House and you look on the second floor, there's a huge mural of the Yankee Division, the Army Division getting an award from the French. And it's my understanding it's the first foreign award ever given to one of our military units. You'll see that's pretty similar uniform, the same colors and very similar styling. So that's kind of where they got the idea for the uniforms, and that's what we're wearing today. As you see, we talked about animals a short time ago. There was a huge problem in Massachusetts with poultry thievery. A lot of farmers were being decimated by poultry thieves. So the state police came up with this tattooing regimen where you could get your chickens registered with a tattoo, and it made it harder to sell them on the black market or get them involved in cockfights. You'll see here there are a pair of spurs which would have been put on those birds, and you put them in a pen together and they would hack each other to death, and people would bet on them. And there are some very famous raids that went on around the Commonwealth where a lot of people were arrested for engaging in gambling and facilitating these fights between the birds. This is our mock-up of the famous Norman Rockwell picture called The Runaway.
Terrific.
We have a mock trooper of Trooper Dick Clemens, and people come in and they can sit here and recreate that photograph. There's also a chef's hat and other accoutrements behind the counter that people can wear to simulate the picture.
Does anybody today order liver and onions?
Nobody orders liver and onions that
it's
I'm
one
aware
of those things you see it on old menus, but not much anymore.
But this is interesting because Rockwell painted everything from pictures, and up on the wall there we have one of the original pictures that he utilized where the counterman was actually much younger, but then after he took the picture, he didn't like the fact that the guy was so much younger. He wanted the trooper who was middle-aged, the boy who was young, and then the older counterman. Some examples of the types of radios that we've had in the cars over the years. They've gone from very, very basic stuff, low-band radios, all the way up to what are called 800 megahertz high-band radios now. And if you look at the bottom there, a smattering of some of the walkie-talkies. We didn't have, on the state police, portable radios handed out to everyone until the mid-1990s. My first 5 years on the state police, I had no portable radio. When you got out of your car, you were expected to turn on your PA system, so if anybody was calling you, you could be heard. But you had no way of responding if you were in trouble. So. We've come a long, long way since then. Now you have computers in cars and the ability to carry a little lapel mic and contact your barracks if you need help. We move to here, where we see just a mock-up from the 50s and 60s, the original, what's called a reefer jacket that they used to wear, heavy woolen jacket, which is no longer worn. This is kind of a mock-up of what they would have worn at a prison riot. I remember seeing them going into Norfolk prison. They would have been to Walpole prison several times until those facilities established their own tactical units. Here you see just some more of the memorabilia from that age. Every barracks actually had Tommy guns in them at one time, but they were replaced by rifles and shotguns, and those were eventually replaced as the cruisers began getting the shotguns and rifles as well. But some of the other interesting things here, The old type of radar. It wasn't a digital readout, it was just an analog readout. And one thing that's kind of interesting here is something that I never got to use on the far left there of the cabinet. This is what they had prior to the breathalyzers that we are familiar with seeing today. It was a device where you put an ampule in, and then you breathe through the tube, and it would somehow measure the color of the ampule and the amount of alcohol in the breath, and then it would give you an analog readout. So, just an early example of a breath test machine. We'll move over here. Just some examples of the license plates on the cruisers over the years and the first aid kits that they used to have, and they currently have the big orange bag. Prior to that, it was just very, very basic, a little tin box with a few bandages in it.
Right.
It wasn't much more than that. Now we start to get into the part of the museum where we get into the specialty units. First we start off with the explosive ordnance folks, or the bomb squad as they're more commonly called. This is an example of the type of protective suit that they would wear. It's actually, I believe it's heated, and it provides air conditioning as well, depending on the conditions that you're involved in. And this device here at the foot of this mannequin is a device for rendering explosive devices unharmful. They actually hook up a fire hose to it, and the very high pressure of the fire hose goes through that extremely small aperture, and it almost acts like a cutting device.
Oh.
So they're able to cut into containers that might have an explosive device in it and so forth. That's likely after they've already x-rayed it to see what's inside. Here are just some examples of some of the types of explosive devices that they've discovered over the years. These are all inert, obviously. Not unusual at all to get calls for someone cleaning out Grandpa's garage, and they find a World War II grenade that Grandpa brought home from the war. They will call the bomb squad to go dispose of that. Then we get into the dive team, an example of one of the older dive suits they used to wear. These people will go out and dive for missing people. They'll also dive ships coming into the harbor, make sure there's no explosive devices attached to the hull, especially LNG tankers, things like that. Or anytime there's a special event, like a tall ships event, they'll be activated also to go out and dive along the hulls of the ships. We just get into just a smattering of these things I've just mentioned. They're kind of all in this cabinet here. One thing that I think is kind of unique is this here. This is a pepper fogger, which is meant to disperse a large amount of either pepper spray or tear gas into like a prison situation where you need a wide area that needs to be covered. Certainly they don't use anything like that today. But what you might see are these types of grenade launchers, which will launch tear gas or pepper grenades, things like that. As we move along here, just examples of the uniforms worn by the different specialty units. This here is one of the pilot's uniforms. If I'm correct, they have 5 helicopters now and a couple of fixed-wing aircraft. This is typically the uniform that they would wear on board the aircraft. This you see here is what the public order platoons, or POPs as we call them, would wear at a civil disturbance. They've got some protection from projectiles thrown at them on their arms, shoulders, their legs as well. They've got the riot shield, and of course the helmet and the respirator, meant to filter out any kind of tear gas that might be in the air or other particulates. This here is simply what we call a BDU uniform. This is worn by the truck team or the commercial vehicle enforcement team. Cotton, lightweight, very cheap, easy to replace because it's a dirty job and they get damaged quite often. So that's what they would wear.
They've got the scales right behind the
gentleman. They've got the scales behind them as well. These folks doing a very important job. When you figure you have a large truck, maybe it weighs 80,000 pounds. If somebody is playing games with the brakes to try to save on the brake pads or overloading their trucks or something, they can be extremely dangerous. And these folks are out there enforcing the laws and make sure that these trucks adhere to the safety regulations.
Has that always been part of the state police work?
It has been, yes, it has been for a long time. But now the trucking industry is federally regulated, so these people have special federal powers to enforce those rules and laws. Here you see the example of a motorcycle unit officer, the only unit on the job allowed to wear leather coats. But that's what they're wearing with the reflective cross straps for better visibility. And here again you see a BDU uniform on the canine officer. Again, it's a dirty job, they get damaged, and that's easily replaced, and it's lightweight. The canine has a ballistic vest to protect it from firearms. Now, I want to mention the fact that at one time, Massachusetts had multiple statewide policing agencies. We had the state police, we had the registry police, we had the Capitol Police, and we had the MDC police. And Governor Weld merged them all together back in 1992. Here you see examples of the uniforms worn by those agencies. The Registry of Motor Vehicles. This here is a Capitol uniform. I'm sorry, that is a registry uniform. That's their dress uniform. Here we have a Metropolitan Police uniform, or MDC uniform, and then the Capitol Police as well. Outside the Mass State Police, the MDC Police was the second largest statewide policing agency in the country. So we do have a separate case here for their display, where you see the original tunics that they wore. Again, a heavy woolen tunic with the original badge, and an original saddle that they would have worn on their horses back in the turn of the last century.
And they got started with the reservoirs and things like that?
The reservoirs and parks and things like that, yeah. It's essentially wherever there was MDC property or MDC water pipes or something, they would have jurisdiction in those areas. But again, in 1992, they were merged with the state police. Moving on here, just a couple more specialty units off in the corner here. Just a representation of our gang unit, who deals with these specially trained officers who deal with violent street gangs. They'll dress in street clothes just to kind of meld in with the population. And they do a great job. It's a very dangerous job. They're dealing with the worst of the worst. And they most often work hand in hand with local police agencies that are very familiar with the gangs and the individuals in those gangs. Here you see a member of our STOP team, Special Tactics and Operations, otherwise known to other folks as SWAT. Obviously very heavily kitted up with ballistic protection, specialty firearms, and the ability to do a lot of crazy things like rappelling out of helicopters or down the sides of buildings. These people will deal with maybe an armed person barricaded in a home, or someone holding a hostage, threatening to kill hostages. Again, they're very highly trained, and they are extremely dedicated to the job. You have to be, because of the danger that they're involved in.
Do they work, or are they in bed with like the Metro LEC in our Franklin area that covers
they have
towns, or is that a separate
the law
thing?
enforcement consortiums have their own SWAT teams. They don't ordinarily work together on a large operation like maybe the Marathon, or you've got tall ships coming up in Boston. They may have separate areas that they'll cover, areas of responsibility, but they don't ordinarily work hand in glove together. And this is just a quick hats off to our forensic evidence folks. We've got a lot of civilian people that work for our forensics evidence teams, and a lot of troopers as well. Some of the photographic equipment, the fingerprint equipment. All the fingerprints are done now electronically.
Right.
They don't.
And does that really work?
Yes, it does.
I had to get fingerprinted for an FID, and they had so much trouble getting fingerprints off of me with electronic stuff.
Well, these old wooden ones, that's what I used to use, and sometimes it's difficult to get a fingerprint even with that. But the beauty of the electronic ones is that you can try it as many times as you want without having to get your fingers all inked up or replacing paper cards.
Right.
And it goes directly to a
database,
national database, so they can identify the print right away.
Interesting.
We see here some of the fraternal organizations involved in the state police, referencing the boxing team, the pipe and drums folks, the running teams that we have. And again, the full kit here for the bagpipe unit people. They did have to purchase that uniform on their own when it first started. I don't believe that that's the case anymore. I'm not sure. But these folks will play at funerals, at state police graduations, and other fundraising events, and they're very, very good at what they do. Today we just see a quick nod to some of the more modern stuff that we have here, the modern badges, the electronic control device, or taser as most people know it these days. You saw the breath test machine over there, that very ancient looking test machine. Now we have these little roadside portable breath tests. That can be utilized to determine if somebody has perhaps had a little too much to drink. If they were to flunk that in other field sobriety tests, and they would likely be arrested, then they would take the breathalyzer back at the barracks. One thing I want to mention here is a nod to our cadet program. This is something fairly new that the state police have been doing. For young folks that may be interested in a law enforcement career. If you're between 19 and 25 years of age, you can take the test to become a cadet, and when it comes time to perhaps become a trooper, you would get first shot above everyone else on the test because you've spent time actually working for the job. It is a job, they get paid, and it's a great introduction to state police life. Moving along, this is the last of our specialty units here. This is the canine unit. I know we mentioned it a little earlier, but this is a little more canine-centric with the dog itself and some of the equipment that is utilized when dealing with the dogs. We have a number of different kinds of dogs. We have what we call working patrol dogs, shepherds, Malinois, that will track people, that will sniff out drugs, and we've also got dogs that will sniff out bombs.
Oh, wow.
They're usually something like a lab. We have the comfort dogs that a lot of agencies are getting now, that's golden retriever. We've even got canines now that can sniff out electronic devices like thumb drives and other computer components, because there's a lot of high-tech crime being perpetrated using those devices. So people will sometimes secrete them in a wall or under a floorboard or something, and the canine can sniff those things out. Very, very interesting stuff. Again, another nod to what's going on presently, the modern badges, quick dioramas of some of the specialty units. I mentioned before the computers that we have in the cars now. That's just an example of one there. And then this is a nod to Colonel Henderson, who was actually the colonel when the consolidation of all the agencies took place. He shepherded our agency through that. It was a difficult transition because there were so many different agencies melded together. Each one had their own culture, each one had their own policies, procedures, ways of doing things. But the biggest impediment was the retirement age.
Oh, wow.
The state police at the time, before the consolidation, at 50 years of age, you had to retire. You were forced out. The other agencies, it was 65. So it took court orders to finally determine that the age 50 was too arbitrary. The 65 was arbitrary. Now it's as long as you can pass the the exam, the physical exam, you're good to go.
Not so good for people who might have wanted to retire at 50. I guess.
Exactly, yes.
Oh, my goodness.
Just an example of one of the motorcycles from the 50s. This was lovingly restored for us, and we appreciated them doing that. Very nice motorcycle, well done, and a real nod to the motorcycle unit. These bikes, as they progressed in the years, they got a lot safer. A lot of troopers were killed in the early days on the motorcycles.
Yeah, they only had rear brakes, I think, at the beginning, didn't they?
Rear brakes, the roads weren't that good.
Right.
So a lot of them, and they didn't have helmets at the time. They just rode with the police hat on.
Right.
Just a quick look at some of the different kinds of firearms that the state police have used over the years. Everything from the original 6-shooters on the left there. moving forward down to some of the more modern semi-automatic guns. When I was in the academy in 1988, they transitioned. My class was the first to get the 9mm semi-automatic firearms, and that's what state police have been using since. Although they did go to 40 caliber and then 45, now they're back to 9mm as well. We don't have them anymore, but there was a shooting team that was extremely skilled, and we're winning awards all over the country. That's just a quick nod to those folks.
And did they use your stock firearms or special weapons?
They would use the issued weapons,
Okay.
and but they would train quite a bit, and they were very good at what they did. And they were often the firearms instructors for the academy as well. This is a nod here to the academy and some of the early uniforms as well. This is just a mock-up of a footlocker that you would see in the academy, with perfectly spaced shirts and jackets, and everything's kept nice and clean and orderly. Otherwise, you'd get what's called a gig. Military people would know what that is.
Is that something you can say out loud?
Yeah, it's okay, but it's kind of it's a knock. And it can work against you in the end as far as your class ranking. Again, examples of the early uniforms and some early photographs of academy classes, going all the way back to the 20s. You'll see up here, these hats that are hanging on the wall, or covers as they're called in the academy, represent people that drop out of the class. And it's not meant to humiliate anybody, but it's meant to motivate the people that are still there to try hard and work at graduation. You don't want your cover to be hung up there. So that's just an example of that.
When was the academy built out in the New Braintree, is it?
New Braintree,
That's pretty recent. Well,
that was in the early 90s. My class, the 69th Recruit Training Troop, was the last class to graduate from Framingham. And then we had the consolidation, and then after that they built the current academy, which was the original, it was an original boarding school.
Oh.
Then it was to become a prison, but the people in New Braintree didn't want that, so it became a state police training facility. And it's a state-of-the-art facility. It's very good.
When the consolidation happened, were there big differences in sort of method and approach amongst the different people that came into the
Yes, there were different
State
methods.
Police?
Yes, there were different methods and approaches. You know, one minor thing, but it was a bone of contention, was how to write up a speeding ticket. You know, which was it Chapter 90, Section 18, or was it Chapter 90, Section 17? Little things like that. But we eventually ironed that out, and you know, it was a long time ago now.
You think it made the organization better in the end?
I think in the end, it made us stronger. And you know, for the taxpayer, it saves some money where you're not paying different organizations and their retirement benefits and their infrastructure and so forth. So.
Now, can I interrupt and ask about the environmental police? Because they're a statewide law enforcement now,
That is true. They have a very, very specialized niche. They do. There were attempts at times to integrate them with the state police, but for whatever reason, it just didn't happen. But we do work hand in hand with them. They've actually got very, very strong police powers. They can effectuate an arrest for a lot of minor things that even state police or local police can't. So they've got, again, a very specialized niche. Very difficult to get into.
Interesting.
Believe it or not. But yeah, attempts to integrate into the state police have never really gone anywhere, and I don't know why that is.
Fascinating. Wow. I had no idea there was so much to know. This was just scratching the surface.
Scratching the surface.